I'm David from Simple and Engaging. Just wanted to share a little workflow, automated workflow that I've been using myself over the past couple of weeks, and it's been super useful. So I create a lot of content for my business as part of our marketing plan on website and LinkedIn and that sort of stuff. And I often find myself, usually when I'm out and about, have an idea that I'd really like to expand on. And I'm away from my computer and I can't do much. So I had this idea of, well, what if you could send that idea over a voice note to an AI, and then it would ask you questions to then expand on your idea and then produce a blog post at the end, kind of consolidating your thinking that you can then edit from there. So that's exactly what we built. So we use a Telegram bot. So you can upload a voice note for that when you're out and about. It's usually when I'm walking the dog. The audio is then transcribed and processed using AI, and the AI, which I've trained and prompted on my own circumstances and situation, generates a series of follow-up questions. Those questions are sent to me via the Telegram bot, which I can then respond to again via a voice note. And this process happens a few times until we get to the point where we're relatively comfortable with how the idea is progressing, and it'll automatically draft a blog post based on that conversation. So let's dive straight in, have a little play around with it. So as you can see, I've got my Telegram bot here. I'm doing this on the computer because I'm recording the video, but there's a Telegram app, so you could do this on your phone as well while you're out walking. And it's expecting a voice note, so that's what we need to send it. So let's record a voice note with the initial idea. I would like to create a blog post. I've got an idea for a blog post around why many nonprofits misunderstand tech costs. There's a lot of affordable, free, freemium, modular tools out there that I don't think are being used. Just because nonprofits might have small budgets and limited resources doesn't mean that you can't get good technology to use. And you can also, centralizing data, automating workflows, that sort of stuff can actually reduce a lot of costs and free up time for your staff to work on more important things and more activities that drive more value. You don't necessarily need big tech teams to be able to make it work, and there's a real opportunity to embrace automation technology platforms like this to really progress your organization. So behind the scenes, that's now transcribing the audio, it's sending the transcription to an AI, and it's going to then return a summary of what I said to make sure it's understood. And then, as you can see, there's some questions there, so you can have a read through, and then when you're ready you can respond. So I'm going to respond quickly to these just to kind of show you how this all comes together. So some specific examples of affordable or free tools. I think there's some really cool workflow automation tools. So you've got Pabbly Connect, you've got Make.com, you've got N8N, you've got Zapier. These are tools that connect other tools together. They all have freemium plans. Or in N8N's case, it's an open source platform, so it could technically be free. Really useful to kind of drive workflow automation. I think the biggest misconceptions nonprofits have about the costs associated with implementing new technologies is an assumption that there's probably a very high upfront cost, an assumption that things need to be built from scratch. That's not the case anymore unless you've got a really, really kind of niche use case. And also, I think that a big misconception as well is that a platform has to take over a whole process. A new technology has to take over a new process, which obviously has a lot of change management with it. In reality, you've got tools out there which can just slot into existing processes, automate and optimize specific parts of that to drive real value. Beyond budget barriers, I think there's a lack of awareness. I think that's largely driven by the fact that nonprofits are full of really smart, dedicated, hardworking people who are stretched really, really thin. So they don't necessarily have the bandwidth or necessarily the expertise to consider stuff like this, and that's where external consultants like ourselves can help to bridge that gap. So again, that's now sending that information off to the AI to be transcribed and in a 20, 30, 40 seconds or so. It'll come back with a summary of what I've just said with some additional follow-ups. So can you elaborate on how these workflow automation tools can slot into existing processes, an existing specific example? Okay, so let's answer these quickly. An example of these workflow automation tools slipping into existing processes. Let's take a real basic example. So let's say you run a lot of events. You've probably got a particular platform that you use to capture event registrations. It might be Humanitics or Eventbrite, and then you've probably got a CRM somewhere else that holds all data about your beneficiaries, your donors, your funders, that sort of stuff. So a workflow automation tool, at the moment, you're probably having to copy and paste information in or having to cross-reference. What you can do is as a new registration comes into one of those platforms, automatically send that data to your CRM. Really, really quite straightforward automation, but that adds a lot of value. So in terms of overcoming a lack of awareness and expertise, I think the most important thing nonprofits need to think about is that it's actually not about the technology at all. It's about the process. So they need to take the time to really understand the process that's causing the most, taking up the most time from their team, or causing the most problems within their teams, taking up a lot of time, not the best use of resources. Take the time to understand that process, map it out, identify where the bottlenecks are, and then at that point you know what you want technology to help with. You know the specific point in the process that you want technology to help with. So it really helps you to come up with the set of requirements or the specific problem that you need technology to solve. In terms of advice and exploring technologies, like I say, that first step is looking at your processes. So a really good way of doing this, take, for the course of a week, jot down on a bit of paper as you go through the day what sort of activities you're spending your time on. A good question to ask is, do you think it's a good use of your time? And if not, why not? It might be repetitive, tedious, taking you away from activities that can really drive your nonprofit forward. So again, that's sending off the information to the AI. Obviously, the conversation builds together over the course of these, and it will either come back with a summary and some more questions, which it has. So let's answer those. Okay, following the map, the process program specific. Okay, in terms of the specific questions, is this activity repetitive in nature? Is this activity copying information from one system to another? Is this activity following the same process steps? If you answer yes to any of those, they're really, really good candidates for automation opportunities and should certainly be explored. How can nonprofits effectively evaluate different technology solutions? So the criteria to prioritize is that it solves your specific problem. So don't get caught up with all the bells and whistles of technology. It does this, it's got this feature. If you're going into it knowing I've got this very specific process problem, I know exactly what I need to solve, that can be really, really effective in doing that. Change management. So yes, change management is a big problem. If you're introducing a big platform like a new CRM, you need to make sure that change management is built into that. You've got the resources and the time to do that. A lot of nonprofits don't. So this is more about how can you optimize your existing processes. So it's not people having to learn new processes. It's not people having to learn new systems. It's about optimizing existing workflows. So how can you speed up, in the event management, the event registration to CRM process, that's not changing how you run events, it's not changing how you run your CRM, it's just taking that bit in the middle, which is moving data from one place to another and automating it, so taking that off your plate. So no real change management involved, does it all behind the scenes. It should be seamless, it should be frictionless, and you should be able to see real value. So as you can see, you can be quite verbose with these. You don't necessarily need to worry about it being word perfect or ums and ahs. The AI is generally pretty good at picking up the gist of what you're trying to say. Sometimes it does make a couple of errors, particularly with acronyms or stuff like that. And then what it will do is once it reaches a certain point, it will then spit out a Google Doc, which we've got here. So it's then given me some of my points that I can then work on to refine. So all of this you could do while you're out, and then once you're back into in front of your laptop, you can start to work on refining that. Obviously it's not ready as it is, but it's kind of consolidated your thoughts and got you to think a little bit deeper. So really cool tool that I've had a lot of fun using. It's been really useful in producing content at my end, and really happy to share it all with you to show you how it works. So thank you very much.